We might have some new Toyota team owners coming into the NASCAR Cup Series, and we're going to talk about the Daytona Duels from last night and the controversy around the way to get in the Daytona Duels. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got quite a few NASCAR stories to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. Let's go ahead and start talking about all the sponsor announcements from the last day or two. Let's start off with Tyler Reddick's 2021 Quartz Hill Our Motorsports scheme. I have to say that this paint scheme is really good. Remember, Tyler Reddick will be attempting to make the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Daytona. He will have to qualify in that event because of the fact that they don't have enough owners points to make an event. I really do like this paint scheme a lot, and it's a really good scheme. I can't wait to see it on the racetrack for the season opener at Daytona for the Xfinity Series. We're now going to look at Colby Howard's 2021 Linder Machinery scheme. I like this paint scheme quite a bit. It's not as good as the Tyler Reddick paint scheme, in my honest opinion, but it still looks really cool. Colby Howard, I believe, is locked into the Xfinity Series race. Well, actually, I think he has to qualify as win as well. I don't know if they have enough owners points to back it up or not, but I do like this paint scheme a lot, and we will see that out on the racetrack as well for the 2021 season. We're now going to also look at Brett Moffitt's 2021 Freight Auction scheme. Now, Freight Auctions has been partnering up with Brett Moffitt. They'll be partnering up with him, I think, in the Truck Series as well as series over at Nice Motorsports. But they'll be partnering up in this Xfinity Series as well for the Daytona season opener. I don't know if there's any other races they're going to be partnering up with them in 2021, but I do like this paint scheme quite a bit. I'm usually a fan of the Freight 8 auction schemes that come out, especially the ones in the Cup Series, and I think it looks like a pretty good paint scheme, and that one we will see out on the racetrack in 2021. The final paint scheme we're going to look at is William Byron's 2021 Exalta Electrolyte scheme that we are going to see at the Pocono doubleheaders. I don't remember if it's going to be both of them, but we will see that at the Pocono doubleheaders this year. I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm not a fan of this scheme really one bit. The colors are kind of yucky. Again, it might be just an issue with the rendering, and it might look better on track than what we see from the rendering, but I'll be honest with you, this scheme does not look really, really great. I hope it is better, but I'm just not a fan of the paint scheme, but I just really am not a fan. It's not my favorite paint scheme in the world. And now we're getting on to the other major stories of today's episode. Clint Bowyer has signed an endorsement deal with Fox Bet, which is owned by Flutter Entertainment. It has a licensing deal with Fox, and you can do the Super 6 Fox Bet with Clint Bowyer as well. Usually NASCAR's personnel, people like Jeff Gordon, Mike Joyce, Shannon Spake, I believe they're all part of this as well. So usually people that are in the Fox booth generally are involved in the Fox Super 6 picks, which is a big thing they also do on Fox for the NFL as well. So people see Clint Bowyer now part of that. No surprise, to be honest with you, but it's really cool that Clint Bowyer is going to have an endorsement deal with Fox Bet for 2021. I'm really happy for Clint Bowyer to be part of that. And now we're getting on to the next major story of today's episode. David Starr is going to be driving the final 32 races for MBM in the number 13 car in 2021, starting at the Daytona Road Course. We know that Chad Fincham will start the season opener for them in that 13 car, but David Starr is going over to that team for the rest of the season in 2021. I believe the reason that David Starr will be going there for the rest of the year is because he does have sponsorship. Remember, he used to have Whataburger as a major sponsor for the last couple of years, and that's why I do think he's going to be taking over that 13 car full-time. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not expecting too much from David Starr in this car. I think David Starr is an okay driver, to be honest with you. He had a lot of success in the Truck Series back in the day, but he's someone who really never generally runs up in the front in the Xfinity Series. Again, he's really never had a top-tier car in the Xfinity Series. I'll be honest with you, David Starr's goal is to just do the best he can, complete laps as best as possible, and just stay out of the way of the championship. But it is cool that David Starr is going to run this year, and I can't wait to see what he'll do in 2021. I think he'll get some top 20s this year. I could see that, especially if there's a lot of attrition in some of these Xfinity Series events like we saw last year. I can definitely see a couple top 20s here and then, and maybe he'll do really good at Daytona if he's able to make it into the show. And now we're getting on to the next story of today's episode. Kyle Larson is not planning on running the Knoxville Truck Series race in 2021. Now, there have been potential rumors going around that Kyle Larson was maybe thinking about running the Truck Series Knoxville race because he's a guy who runs a lot of Dirt Series events, and I mean, he just won the Chili Bowl earlier this year. But we now know and have confirmation that Kyle Larson is not going to be racing this event. I'm really not surprised, to be honest with you. I think his main focus is for the Cup Series. I don't think he's going to run any other series this year. I don't know if he's going to be running that much dirt here as well. I don't think he's going to be running any of the World of Outlaws events on the offside driving for Hendrick Motorsports. I mean, Kyle Larson's main focus is to try to win a NASCAR Cup Series championship this year with the 5 organization at Daytona, trying to win the Daytona 500 as well. That's his main focus. Again, he could maybe in the future run this event, but right now he's not planning on running the Knoxville Truck Series race. It would be really cool if he rode this year for like GMS, but I don't think it's going to happen this year. And Kyle Larson is not planning on running the Knoxville Truck Series race in 2021. Now reading on to the next story of today's episode. Noah Gragson is not planning on running any additional races in 2021 in the NASCAR Cup Series for Beer Motorsports. It looks like his only opportunity to make it this year in the Cup Series for 2020 Beer Motorsports looks like is only going to be the Daytona season opener, which is the Daytona 500, as he's going to mainly be focusing on the Xfinity Series Championship in 2021. It really is a shame that Noah Gragson isn't planning on running any more races here, especially since, he's not going to be racing the 500 because he failed to qualify to make it in this year's Daytona 500. It'd been really cool if Beer Motorsports was going to run more races in 2020, especially with Noah Gragson's personality. I think Noah Gragson has a very strong personality, and I think he's a very aggressive driver on the super speedway tracks as well. He was up front last night in the Daytona Duels. Like I said, unfortunately, he's not racing in the event, but he's a guy who's contended for wins in Xfinity Series on super speedways. He got his first career win on a super speedway race at Daytona last year with Junior Motorsports. It'd be really cool if he was going to run this year, and hopefully maybe they do change their minds and run later this year, but unfortunately, Noah Gragson is not planning on running any additional races in 2021 with Beer Motorsports. As I'm currently editing today's video, it looks like finally we have an update on the Las Vegas situation when it comes to fans, and it's actually some pretty good news. According to Bob Pockers, Las Vegas Motor-Speedway says its Cup weekend in March expected to be conducted with a limited number of fans in the seating area. Fan attendance is contingent upon approval of the Las Vegas Motor Speedway plan that has been submitted to the Nevada Department of Business and Industry. Now, that's really good news. Now, how many fans do I think are going to be allowed? I would say probably between 10 and 20% capacity, since Las Vegas is a pretty strict area. I've been waiting on this announcement for the last couple weeks. It had been reported that they had not been announced how many fans were going to be. I expect that probably they're going to be 20 to 25% or 10 to 25% capacity is kind of generally the area of fans, but I expect it. But yeah, it's really cool now that we have a little bit of a date, and it looks like finally, even though last week we didn't have fans at Vegas, it looks like this time around we are going to have fans at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, and that's really exciting news to hear. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about the Clash TV ratings from this past Tuesday night, as this is the first time that the Clash was run on a weekday, as usually the Clash is run on a Saturday night or Sunday evening, moved it to this week due to the Super Bowl. Let's look at the TV ratings. FS1 earned a 1.577 million viewers for the Busch Clash this year. That is down from 2.455 million viewers, which is run on a Sunday. And in my opinion, this does not help the opportunity of NASCAR doing midweek races. Last year, NASCAR really struggled on when they had midweek races. NASCAR usually struggled on catching a lot of viewership for these events. I think Kansas last year was like the least viewed race since NASCAR went on main television for NBC and Fox in the past 21 years. And the fact that this is down from last year, again, this is the first time it was on a midweekend. A lot of people were probably at work. You had some people maybe at school at times when this race is going on. I really don't know. Maybe online school was happening at the time. But the fact that Clash TV ratings are down, this does not help with midweek races. And I do think that there's a good potential possibility that this race is going to be moved back to the weekend. And I think that NASCAR should definitely move back to weekend, but maybe also move it back to Daytona Road Course as well and help people and guide them as well. But yeah, very interesting that the ratings are down for the Daytona Clash, which was really disappointing to say at the least. The next thing we're going to talk about was also reported by Adam Stern. Fox Sports is sold out on inventory for the Daytona 500 as 36 new brands on board. This includes CPGs, financial people, insurance, autos, QSRs, and streaming categories. Now, hopefully, the race is able to happen on time, but unfortunately, there is a lot of rain in the forecast, and maybe there's a good potential that some of these commercials we see, if the race is to get delayed, we can see a lot of these commercials happen this year, because the weather for this weekend does not look very promising, especially maybe today as well. There might be some rain in the forecast for the next couple days, but yeah, that's kind of the reporting on that. I hope we get to see it, because again, it's really interesting. There's 36 new brands have never been a part of NASCAR. Maybe we're going to see some other auto insurance companies that we've really never seen before, but it's really interesting on that report, and definitely very interesting thing to talk about, that's for sure. And now we're getting on to the next story of today's episode. Fox Sports' Michael Mulvihill brought up something very recently, and we're going to talk about that. Fox Sports remains bullish on NASCAR rating this year after stable 20 and a compelling storylines for 2021 per Michael Mulvihill. Now, with little practice and qualifying this year, Mulvihill also noted that the industry should keep in mind how valuable that content has been traditional to Fox. We're talking about practice and qualifying. Usually, Fox Sports has had practice and qualifying every single year, but last year, because of COVID, there was no practice qualifying, and there's only going to be a few races here that are going to have practice qualifying. Now, there are going to be iRacing events on FS1, but that's not going to be really good for sponsorship and stuff. I mean, during the practice on Wednesday, they actually got to talk to a lot of drivers and actually talk about many of the drivers, some that were able to get an event and others that were not able to get into the event for that. And then this is something I really want to bring up. I believe that starting in 2022, especially with the fact that there needs to be practice qualifying every single week starting in 2022. IndyCar and F1 and any other motorsport has practice and qualifying. NASCAR should have already brought practice qualifying back in 2021. You could have the social distance protocols and you could have had less practice. Yes, you don't need 3 or 4 hours of practice and you don't need a lot of longer qualifying sessions. But in my opinion, you need to have at least 1 hour of practice every single event, and you need to have a little bit of and you also need to have qualifying for every single event as well. No objections. There's no reason in NASCAR now when F1 and IndyCar is able to have it, especially now they're doing COVID testing. I think that they absolutely 100% need to be bringing back practice and qualifying as early as 2022. They need to bring it back as soon as possible for smaller teams as well and for sponsorship sakes as well. That's just my opinion on that. And now we're getting on to the next story of today's episode. Toyota recently just came out, and David Wilson had a report recently, and Charles Bradley brought this up. Toyota is currently talking to potential team owners of coming into the NASCAR Cup Series. And very interesting to note, there's 2 new team owners that are in conversation with, and these are people that are not currently involved in the sport, but they are well-funded and credible, and they're kind of from the business side of things. They didn't bring up like the business side. They might be people from the sports side or other places like the music industry and stuff. And a lot of the reason that this is the case is because of the next-gen car. Now, there are a lot of new team owners that have come into sport mainly because of the next-gen car. Look at Michael Jordan. Look at Colleague Racing. They might want to come out to sport. Look at Spire Motorsports expanding to a couple cars. Maybe even Rickroll Racing's looking at that as well. Some of these smaller teams are looking at that next-gen car because while it's going to be a lot of upkeep costs at first, that next-gen car is supposed to overall, long-term, save teams a lot of money. And it's supposed to basically save teams a lot of money as year goes on because they're going to be getting the same chassis, so that's also going to help the small teams as well keep up the pace. Now, my question is, who are these team owners? Are they maybe part of IndyCar, maybe Andretti Autosport or Harding Steinberger? Maybe they're going to be some of the teams they're in conversation with. Or maybe it's some people from the NFL coming over. People like Alvin Kamara coming over, perhaps, because he's been interested. Maybe Bernie Bernard Jr. Maybe people from the MLB coming over. Maybe business owners and stuff. Maybe people that own stadiums. Maybe some of the NFL legends maybe come back into sport. The fact that there are so many new team owners that are potentially coming into the sport is really interesting. But for those guys to be competitive right away in the Cup Series and have an opportunity, they're going to need a charter system. And NASCAR has said that they're not planning on getting new charters at this current time. So my question is, which of these new teams are we going to see? That's something we're going to have to watch. But it's really interesting that there are some new team owners that might be coming into the sport in the foreseeable future. And now we're getting on to the final major story of today's episode. We're going to talk about the duels at Daytona from last night. And, of course, rain hit the racetrack, of course, after duel number 1. So let's talk about duel number 1 first. Aric Almirola won duel number 1. He will start third currently at the moment, but there's a potential that Alex Bowman, who started on the front row, he had engine issues, and he will have to possibly go to the back, though he might end up staying up in the front row because Chad Knaus recently reported that they might be good to go to stay up front. Unfortunately, Ty Dillon is not in the duel, is not going to be making this year's Daytona 500. And unfortunately, Timmy Hill will not be racing in this year's Daytona 500. Austin Cindric is able to make it into the show because of the qualifying procedures. And for those of you who need a little refresher on the qualifying procedures for this event, on the Wednesday night qualifying, the top 2 fastest cars that are open cars, those being Ryan Preece and David Ragan, they locked their way into the show because the fact that Ryan Preece raced his way into the show when he finished 5th in the duels, he is guaranteed in the show, and that means Austin Cindric is locked in as well. And that's how, unfortunately, Ty Dillon is not in the show, and I'll probably here in a little bit explain what needs to be fixed with the rules to get into the event. In duel number 2, Austin Dillon went on to win duel number 2 in a thrilling finish with him and Bubba Wallace. And honestly, this race was a lot crazier than duel number 1. I think a lot of it came from the fact that there was rain that overall hit the racetrack. And Kaz Grala was able to race his way in after a crazy couple crashes at the end. Around 25 laps ago, the first big one happened. Chase Briscoe, Anthony Alfredo, Kaz Growling, Garrett Smithley, and BJ McLeod were all involved in the first major wreck. Well, the first major wreck. And then the second major wreck happened around 4 laps to go. When Brad Keselowski came up, Garrett Smithley was making a move, and Noah Gragson potentially came down going into turn number 1, causing a pretty big wreck that unfortunately would take out the front row sitter, William Byron, and a couple other cars would get involved, including Noah Gragson, who would fall out of the event, and Garrett Smithley, who would end up going a lap down and not having a shot to make it to the event. And David Reagan was able to race his way in. Now, William Byron, who qualified on the front row for the event, he is going to have to go to back of cars, so he will go to the back. That means Austin Dillon, who ended up winning the duel, he will have to go to the front row now because of the fact that William Byron will go to the back of the field for the Daytona 500. So now we talk about the main conversation of the episode. The way to get in the 500. Now, like I mentioned here a second ago, the way to get into the Daytona 500 rules is something that has been around for a very long time, even before the charter system. But there are things that definitely need to be fixed with this. The fact that teams like Ricker Racing and a guy like Derek Cope, and I'm not 100% blaming Derek Cope, but the fact that Derek Cope was 3 laps off the pace in duel number 2, and it was not up to speed, and almost caused a big one on the last lap on the backstretch, is able to make the Daytona 500. But competitive cars like Ty Dillon, Noah Gragson, and even Garrett Smithley, who could be potential guys who win the Daytona 500, have to race to win it, even Austin Cindric has to race his way in, is ridiculous. So how do you fix this problem? How do you fix the way to get into Daytona 500? Simply, there's 2 options you have. One, only the front row cars get into the event, that being Alex Bowman and William Byron, the only ones locked into the event. That's how it really, in my opinion, should be. I don't think anyone should be locked in unless you get on the front row. Therefore, there's more intrigue around qualifying and potentially way more storylines going to the event than people realizes. Or the second option, and this actually be pretty much a more logical option, is the cars that qualified their way in, being people like Ryan Preece and David Reagan, who qualified their way in, they cannot race their way in. Therefore, it means the race a lot more valuable, and you don't have this issue where a guy like Ty Dillon, who ended up finishing 6th, beats Austin Cindric, who was a lap down. That actually is my solution to the problem of the duels, and I think that is the only way you can overall fix the duel problem for the event. So, anyway, that is going to be for today's NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe to the channel, notifications so you can be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Links in the description below for that. And comment your thoughts on today's video. Do you think that NASCAR overall should fix the way that they do Daytona qualifying? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about potentially some new team owners coming from the Toyota stable? Let me know in the comments below. Tomorrow, I am going to be doing a little bit of a starting grid lineup to tell you which drivers I think are going to make the Daytona 500, who's going to be competitive in the 500. We're going to look at the drivers and your starting line for this year's Daytona 500. So anyway, if you like I said, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you like it so YouTube can recommend more of these great videos out to you guys. If you do that, I would greatly appreciate it. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.